I wasn't the daughter they wanted. I was the daughter they settled for when the real one got tired of being perfect. My name is Elise Sutton, and for 16 years, I thought there was something fundamentally wrong with me. That if I could just work harder, be quieter, take up less space, maybe my parents would look at me the way they looked at my sister Nadia. Maybe they'd smile when I walked into a room instead of sighing like I'd interrupted something important. If you're listening from somewhere far away, drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this has traveled. And please, stay with me until the end. It's November 14th, 2019. It's 11:47 p.m. and I'm in the middle of my shift at Harper's Diner in Chicago when my phone buzzes against my hip. I don't recognize the number, and normally I'd let it go to voicemail, but something makes me answer. Hello? Is this Elise Sutton? Who's asking? This is Dr. Sarah Kim from Northwestern Memorial Hospital. I'm calling about your sister, Nadia Sutton. You're listed as her emergency contact. My hand freezes mid-wipe on the counter. What happened? Your sister was brought in tonight. Overdose. She's stable now, but we need family here. The diner tilts. I grip the edge of the counter. Overdose? Prescription pills. Her roommate found her and called 911. Can you come? Yes, I'm coming. I hang up. Miguel, my coworker, is staring at me. You okay? I'm not okay. I haven't spoken to my family in 3 years. 3 years of silence, of building a life where I didn't have to brace myself every time I walked through a door. 3 years of learning that peace was possible when you stopped asking people to love you the way you needed. And now, this. I untie my apron with shaking hands. I have to go. But before I tell you what happens at that hospital, before I tell you about the phone call that changes everything, you need to understand how we got here. You need to understand the Sutton family. You need to understand what it's like to grow up as the shadow of someone else's light. So let me take you back. Back to when I still believed that love was something you earned through good behavior. Back to when I thought the problem was me. The first time I realized my parents loved my sister more than me, I was 8 years old. It was May 2008, and we were celebrating birthdays in the Sutton household the way we always did, separately, because Nadia's birthday was in March and mine was in May. But the difference wasn't just the months. For Nadia's 14th birthday that March, my parents rented out a private room at Gibson's Steakhouse in downtown Chicago. 25 of her friends came. There was a professional photographer. My mother wore heels and the dress she saved for special occasions. My father gave a toast that made Nadia cry happy tears. The gift was a brand new MacBook, silver and sleek, presented in front of everyone so they could all clap. I remember watching from the corner table they'd set up for me because I was too young to sit with the older kids. I remember thinking how pretty Nadia looked when she smiled like that, how grown up she seemed, how our parents looked at her like she was something precious they were afraid to break. 2 months later, it was my turn. We went to Pizza Hut, not even the nice one, the one with the lunch buffet. There were 5 kids there, mostly neighbors my mom had called the day before. No photographer. My mother wore jeans. My father checked his work emails on his phone through most of it. The gift was a bicycle. Used. My dad had found it at a garage sale and spray painted it blue to cover the rust spots. When I opened it in our driveway after we got home, I tried so hard to look excited. "Do you like it, sweetie?" my mother asked, but she was already turning back toward the house. "I love it," I said to her back. That night, I asked my dad why Nadia's birthday had been different. I didn't say better. Even at 8, I knew better than to make it sound like I was complaining. He was in his study, reading glasses on, papers spread across his desk. Calvin Sutton, financial director at Morrison & Associates, a man who measured value in numbers and returns on investment. "Dad, can I ask you something?" He looked up, already impatient. "What is it, Elise?" "How come Nadia got a big party and I got Pizza Hut?" I asked it genuinely, curiously. I wasn't accusatory. I really wanted to understand the logic. He sighed, took off his glasses. "Sweetie, Nadia's in high school now. She has bigger responsibilities, bigger expectations. When you get older, we'll do more for your birthdays too." It made sense when he said it. It did. Nadia was older. Older meant more important. Older meant you'd earned the big gestures. "Okay," I said. He smiled, relieved. "Good girl. Now let Daddy work, all right?" I went to my room and wrote in my diary, the one with the purple cover and the broken lock. I can't wait to be in high school, so Mom and Dad will be proud of me too. But here's the thing about goalposts in families like mine. They're always moving. 3 years later, when I was 11, I brought home my report card from 6th grade. Straight A's. All of them. Math, English, science, history, even PE. I also had a certificate for Student of the Month signed by my teacher, Mrs. Patterson, with a gold seal in the corner. I was so excited, I practically ran home from the bus stop. My mom, Renee Sutton, was in the kitchen when I burst through the door. She was an elementary school teacher at Ridgewood Primary, the kind of teacher other people's kids loved. She knew how to make learning fun, how to celebrate small victories, how to make children feel seen, just not her own. Mom, look! I waved the report card and certificate. I got all A's, and I'm Student of the Month. She glanced up from her phone. That's nice, honey. She didn't take the papers from my hand. She didn't look closely. She just smiled that distant smile and went back to scrolling. Mrs. Patterson said I'm the first sixth grader to get Student of the Month this year. I tried again. That's wonderful, Elise. Can you set the table for dinner? Your father will be home soon. I set the papers down on the kitchen table and went to get the plates. 20 minutes later, Nadia came home. She was 17 then, a senior at Ridgewood High School, captain of the debate team, member of the National Honor Society, already accepted into Harvard for the following fall. She walked in with an envelope, not even a big envelope, just a regular white envelope from school. I got in, she said, waving it. National Honor Society invited me to be a keynote speaker at the induction ceremony. My mother screamed. Actually screamed, dropped her phone and grabbed Nadia in a hug that lifted her off the ground. Oh my God, baby, that's incredible. Calvin, get in here. My dad came rushing in from the garage, face panicked like something was wrong. What? What happened? Nadia's speaking at the NHS induction. Our daughter is going to give a speech in front of the whole school. My father's face broke into this wide, proud smile I didn't see often. He pulled Nadia into a hug, kissed the top of her head. That's my girl. I'm so proud of you. For the next hour, it was all Nadia. My mom called my grandmother. She posted on Facebook. I counted later, 15 different posts with photos of Nadia and the letter. My dad opened a bottle of wine to celebrate, even though it was a Tuesday. My report card and certificate stayed on the kitchen table, untouched, slowly getting buried under mail and grocery store flyers. 3 days later, I found them in the recycling bin. I didn't cry. I just took them out, brought them up to my room, and put them in a box under my bed where I kept all the things I was proud of that nobody else seemed to notice. There were a lot of things in that box. That night, I wrote in my diary, maybe I need to work harder. Maybe if I do something really big, they'll be proud of me, like they're proud of Nadia. I was 11 years old, and I'd already learned that love in my family wasn't a given. It was a competition I was losing. But the real damage wasn't just the favoritism. That, in a sick way, I could have lived with. Plenty of kids have a sibling who gets more attention. You learn to cope. You find validation elsewhere. No, the real damage was what came next. The thing I didn't have a name for until I was 19 and sitting in a therapist's office at Northwestern's Student Health Center. Gaslighting. It started small. So small, I didn't notice it was happening. May 2013. I was 13 years old in 8th grade. I'd gotten the lead role in our school play, Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. I was terrified and thrilled in equal measure. I'd never been the lead in anything before. Opening night was Friday, May 10th. I told my parents about it 6 weeks in advance. I circled it on the family calendar in the kitchen in red marker. I reminded them every week during family dinner. 4 days before the show, on Monday night, Nadia came home with news. Her debate tournament had been moved to the same weekend, Saturday and Sunday, in Springfield, Illinois, a 2-hour drive from Chicago. I know it's the same weekend as Elise's play, Nadia said, looking genuinely apologetic, but this is the state championship. Coach says if we win, I'll probably get scouted by college debate teams. My mother didn't even hesitate. Of course we'll be there, honey. This is important. I looked up from my homework. But opening night is Friday. The tournament's Saturday, right? The tournament starts Friday night with registration and preliminary rounds, Nadia explained. We have to be there by 6. My play starts at 7, I said, voice small. I know, sweetie, and I wish we could do both, my mother said, already mentally organizing logistics. But we need to leave by 4 to make it to Springfield in time. Can't Dad take Nadia and you come to my play? I asked. My mother looked at me like I'd suggested something absurd. Elise, we both need to be there for Nadia. This is the state championship. Your play runs all weekend, doesn't it? It's 3 nights, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Well, There you go. We'll come to one of the other performances. But Friday is opening night, I said, and I hated how whiny I sounded. You said you'd come to opening night. My mother's face did this thing, this subtle shift from patient to annoyed that I'd learned to recognize. I said I'd try to come if I could, honey. Don't put words in my mouth. I froze. No, you said you'd be there. At the kitchen table when I first told you. You said, of course we'll be there, we wouldn't miss it. Elise, her voice was firm now. I think you misunderstood. I would never make a promise like that without checking the calendar first. You must have heard what you wanted to hear. I looked at my dad. He was reading the newspaper, not meeting my eyes. But Mom, you did say, Elise, enough. Don't be dramatic. She turned back to Nadia. Now, about hotels in Springfield. I sat there, stunned. Had I misunderstood? I was so sure. I could picture the moment, could hear her voice saying those exact words. But she seemed so certain that I was wrong. Maybe I was wrong. I went upstairs and opened my diary to the entry from the day I got the part. March 28th, 2013. I'd written, Mom said she'd be there opening night. She said she wouldn't miss it. Dad smiled and said he'd take off work early. I stared at those words. I wasn't crazy. It had happened. But when I came back downstairs, my parents were gone. They'd left for Springfield without saying goodbye. I rode my bike to school Friday morning and performed that night to a crowd that included my best friend Emma's parents, my teacher Mrs. Rodriguez, and a mostly full auditorium. The seat where my parents should have been was empty. When they came home Sunday night, Nadia's team had won second place. My mother had a photo album already started on Facebook. My dad had bought Nadia a trophy case for her room. How was your play, sweetie? My mom asked at dinner Sunday night, almost as an afterthought. It was good, I said. That's wonderful. I knew you'd do fine. She never mentioned coming to the other performances. Neither did my dad. And when I brought it up 2 days later, tentatively, carefully, my mother looked confused. Elise, I told you from the beginning we might not be able to make it. You knew debate was Nadia's priority this spring. Why are you bringing this up now? Because you promised, I said, voice shaking. I did not promise, and frankly, I don't appreciate you trying to rewrite history to make us look like bad parents. We do our best, Elise. You need to be more understanding. I stopped trying to argue. Instead, I started writing things down. Every conversation, every promise, every time they said something and then later claimed they hadn't. I didn't know why I was doing it, not consciously, but some part of me knew I needed proof that I wasn't losing my mind. It got worse. Summer 2014. I was 14. My best friend, Emma Rodriguez, had invited me to go camping with her family for a week. Emma's dad was a park ranger, and they did this trip every summer to Starved Rock State Park. It was safe, supervised, completely normal. I asked my parents 3 weeks in advance at the dinner table, "Can I go camping with Emma's family? It's the second week of July." My mother didn't even look up from her salad. Absolutely not. Why not? You're too young to go away for a whole week. Nadia went to camp when she was my age, I said. Nadia was more mature at your age, my father interjected, not looking up from his phone. But Emma's parents will be there the whole time, I pressed. It's not like we're going alone. My mother set down her fork with that particular click that meant the conversation was over. Elise, we don't really know the Rodriguez family that well. I'm not comfortable sending you off with strangers for a week. They're not strangers. Emma's been my best friend since 3rd grade. You've met her parents at least 10 times. Don't raise your voice, my dad said sharply. I lowered my voice. I just don't understand why Nadia was allowed to do things like this, and I'm not. Because Nadia could be trusted, my mother said simply. She was responsible. She didn't need constant supervision. The implication hung in the air. You do. I didn't go camping. Emma sent me postcards that week, 4 of them, with pictures of waterfalls and hiking trails and the tent they'd set up. I kept them in my box under the bed. But here's the thing that made me feel like I was going crazy. 2 weeks later, I was looking through our family photo albums for a school project. I needed a childhood photo, so my mom had pulled out the old albums from the hall closet. And there it was. A photo from July 2007. Nadia, age 13, exactly my current age, at a camping trip. The caption in my mother's handwriting, Nadia's first camping adventure with the Mitchell family. So proud of my brave girl. The Mitchell family, not a school trip, not a supervised camp, a family trip just like Emma had invited me on. I brought the album downstairs, hands shaking. Mom, I found this photo. She glanced at it. Oh, that's a sweet one. This was a camping trip with a friend's family. Nadia was 13. That's right. You told me I couldn't go camping with Emma because I was too young and you didn't know the family. But Nadia went with the Mitchells when she was exactly my age. My mother's face didn't change. That was different, Elise. How? It was a school-organized trip. There were counselors. No, it wasn't. You wrote Mitchell family right here. She took the album from my hands, looked closer. I must have misremembered. It's been 7 years. So I can go camping with Emma? No. But you just said... Elise, I'm not going to keep having this argument with you. The answer is no, and that's final. I don't appreciate you digging through old photos to try to catch me in some kind of contradiction. It's manipulative. I felt like I'd been slapped. I wasn't trying to go to your room. I went. That night, I wrote in my diary, I don't understand what's real anymore. Am I crazy? Am I remembering things wrong? Or are they lying to me? I was 14 years old and I'd stopped trusting my own mind. The pattern continued through my freshman and sophomore years of high school. Small moments adding up, eroding my confidence in my own perception of reality. When I got a 1,480 on my SAT in junior year, a score that put me in the 98th percentile, my parents' response was tepid. That's decent, my mother said. Nadia got a 1,520. But that's only 40 points difference, I said, out of 1,600. My father looked up from his laptop. Every point matters for college admissions, Elise. You should have studied harder. I had studied. I'd studied for 3 months, taken practice tests every weekend, worked with a tutor I paid for myself with money from babysitting. But the goalpost had moved again. I'm retaking it in the fall, I said quietly. Good, my father said, and went back to his laptop. I retook it in October of senior year, scored a 1510, 30 points higher. When I told my parents at dinner, my mother nodded. Well, 1510 is good, but you took it twice. Nadia only needed 1 try. I set down my fork. So, even when I do better, it doesn't count? Don't be dramatic, my father said. We're acknowledging that you did well, but facts are facts. You needed 2 attempts. That's just the reality. I looked at Nadia. She was home from Harvard for fall break. She was staring at her plate, not meeting my eyes. Nadia, I said, you think that's fair? She looked up, uncomfortable. I mean, it's true that I only took it once. That's not what I asked. She hesitated. For a second, I thought she might actually defend me. Say something. Stand up. Instead, I think Mom and Dad just want you to push yourself, Ellie. That's not a bad thing. And there it was. Even my sister, the only other person who knew what this family was really like, wouldn't validate my reality. I stopped talking at dinner after that. I ate quickly and excused myself. My parents didn't seem to notice. That night, I wrote, maybe they're right. Maybe I am too sensitive. Maybe I do need to work harder. Maybe. I don't know what's true anymore. But here's what I did know, what I was slowly, painfully beginning to understand. I was never going to be enough for Calvin and Renee Sutton. The bar would always be just out of reach, and even when I cleared it, they'd claim I hadn't jumped high enough, or I'd had too much of a running start, or Nadia had done it better when she was younger. I couldn't win, and I was so tired of trying. Spring of 2016 brought a shift in our household. Nadia's graduation from Harvard was approaching, May 28th to be exact, and my parents talked about almost nothing else. The invitations went out in March. Cream-colored cardstock with embossed lettering, ordered from a specialty printer in Boston. My mother addressed each one by hand in her careful script, over 100 of them, sent to relatives I'd never met and family friends who'd watched Nadia grow up like she was community property. I helped stamp them. That was my role. Sit at the dining room table and press commemorative stamps onto envelopes while my mother reminisced about Nadia's accomplishments to anyone who called. Harvard Law School, can you believe it? She's already been accepted. Full scholarship, of course. I was 16, finishing up my junior year at Ridgewood High. My own college applications were a year away, but nobody asked me where I was thinking of applying. Nobody asked about my finals or my GPA, 4.0, not that anyone noticed, or the AP classes I was taking. The house had become a shrine to Nadia's achievement, and I was just the person who lived there. 2 weeks before graduation, my mother took me shopping. "You need something appropriate to wear," she said as we pulled into the Nordstrom parking lot. "This is a big event. Lots of important people will be there." I followed her through the store, watching as she picked out a simple navy dress from the sale rack. $68. She held it up against me, nodded. "This will be fine. Go try it on." It fit. It was plain. It made me look younger than 16, like someone's kid sister who'd been dragged along to an adult event. "Perfect," my mother said when I emerged from the dressing room. "We'll take it." And as we walked to the register, we passed the section where she'd been shopping for herself the week before. I'd been with her then too, sitting on the bench outside the dressing room while she tried on outfit after outfit. She'd settled on a designer dress, cream-colored, elegant, $450. The shoes to match were another $200. "You don't need anything fancy, honey," she said now, as if reading my thoughts. "All eyes will be on Nadia anyway. No point in overdoing it." I nodded. She was right. Why would I need anything special? I was just part of the audience. A week before graduation, my father pulled me aside after dinner. We were in his study, a room that always smelled like leather and old books, where he retreated every evening to work on things that were more important than family time. "Elise, your mother and I have been talking," he said, settling into his desk chair. "At the family dinner after graduation, we're going to have toasts. You should prepare something to say about your sister." I blinked. "Oh, okay, like a speech? Just a few words, nothing elaborate. We want to keep things moving. There are a lot of people who want to speak, but it would look odd if you didn't say anything." "Right, of course." My mind was already racing, thinking about what I could say, how I could make it meaningful. This was my chance to show everyone, to show Nadia, how proud I was of her, how much I loved her, despite everything. "Just keep it short," he added, already turning back to his computer. 3 or 4 minutes at most. We don't want to eat up too much time." I spent the next week writing and rewriting my toast. I filled 2 pages in my diary with drafts, crossing out words, rephrasing, trying to find the perfect way to express what Nadia meant to me. Because here's the thing, I wasn't jealous of my sister. I never had been. I was jealous of the way my parents loved her. Yes, but Nadia herself, she'd always been kind to me, in her way. Distant sometimes, sure, but never cruel. She'd helped me with homework when I asked. She'd driven me to school when I missed the bus. She'd taught me how to do winged eyeliner before my first high school dance. Nadia wasn't the problem. She was just caught in the same broken system I was, playing a different role. So I wrote her a toast that was honest. That acknowledged how hard she'd worked, how brilliant she was, how much I'd learned from watching her navigate the world. I wrote about the time she'd stayed up all night helping me study for my biology final in freshman year, making flashcards and quizzing me until I knew every answer. I wrote about how she'd never made me feel stupid for asking questions, even when they were basic. I wrote about loving her, because I did. I folded the paper carefully and tucked it into the pocket of my new navy dress, hanging in my closet, ready for graduation day. May 28th, 2016 dawned clear and warm. Perfect graduation weather. We left for Boston early. My father driving, my mother in the passenger seat coordinating logistics on her phone, Nadia beside me in the back seat looking polished and nervous in equal measure. "You okay?" I asked her quietly as we crossed into Massachusetts. She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Just want it to be over, you know, all the ceremony and speeches. I just want to have my degree and move on to the next thing." "You're going to be amazing," I said. She squeezed my hand. "Thanks, Ellie." It was a small moment, the kind that would have meant nothing in a different family, but in ours, it felt significant. A reminder that underneath all the dysfunction, we were still sisters. Harvard Yard was exactly what you'd imagine. Historic buildings, green lawns, hundreds of people in caps and gowns. My parents were in their element, schmoozing with other parents, taking endless photos. My mother's designer dress photographed beautifully. My father's proud parent smile looked genuine for once. I stood off to the side in my $68 navy dress, holding their coats and purses, watching. The ceremony itself was long. Speeches from distinguished alumni, honorary degree recipients, the university president. I sat in the family section between my mother's parents, my grandmother Patricia and grandfather Donald, and tried to pay attention, but my mind kept drifting to the toast in my pocket. 3 to 4 minutes, my father had said. I'd timed it. 3 minutes and 45 seconds when I read it aloud at normal speed. Perfect. When they finally called Nadia's name, Nadia Marie Sutton, Bachelor of Arts, summa cum laude, I screamed louder than anyone. My throat was raw afterward. My mother gave me a look that said I'd been too loud, but I didn't care. That was my sister up there. My brilliant, accomplished, complicated sister. After the ceremony, there was a reception on the lawn. That's where it happened. That's where everything changed. Harvard had a tradition where families of summa cum laude graduates could give brief remarks during the reception. My parents had been asked to speak, an honor, according to the program coordinator, reserved for parents of the highest achieving students. My mother was thrilled. My father had prepared index cards. The reception area was elegant. White tents, round tables with cream tablecloths, centerpieces of peonies and roses. There must have been 300 people there. I recognized some faces from the photos Nadia had sent home over the years. Her roommate Sophie, her study group friends, professors whose names I'd heard 1,000 times. And then there were our people. Uncle Raymond, my father's younger brother, who'd driven up from Connecticut. The Morrison family. David Morrison was my father's boss, and they'd known Nadia since she was in elementary school. The Blackwell family, our neighbors from back when Nadia was in middle school. My mother's book club friends, people from our church. Everyone who'd watched Nadia grow up, who'd heard about every achievement, who saw her as the golden child of the Sutton family. When it was time for the family speeches, a microphone was set up at the front of the tent. The coordinator called my parents up first. They stood together, my father's hand on my mother's back, both of them glowing with pride. My mother spoke first. "We want to thank everyone for coming today to celebrate our daughter Nadia." Her voice was warm, practiced. This was her element, public speaking, performing the role of the perfect mother. From the moment she was born, we knew she was special. She was reading by age 3. By kindergarten, her teachers were telling us she was working at a 3rd grade level. Polite laughter, approving nods. Nadia has always been easy. My mother's smile was radiant. Some children require constant attention and redirection. Her eyes flicked to me, just for a second, so quick that if you weren't watching, you'd miss it. But I was watching. "But, Nadia," she looked back at the crowd. "She's been parenting herself since she was 6 years old. That's the difference between a self-starter and, well, everyone else." More laughter. Knowing laughter from the other parents, the ones who also had difficult children, who understood what my mother meant without her having to spell it out. My father took the microphone next. "You know," he said, his tone jovial, "when we had our second daughter, people asked us if we were trying for a boy." I felt my stomach drop. But honestly, he paused for effect, smiling. After Nadia set the bar so high, we knew we couldn't replicate that magic. The laughter was louder now. I could see people in the audience grinning, nodding along. "Some families peak early," my father continued, "and we're just grateful we got it right the first time." Applause. Actual applause. I sat frozen in my chair, hands clenched in my lap. My face felt hot, my chest felt tight. Everyone was laughing, and I wanted to disappear, to melt into the ground, to cease existing. My first instinct, the one trained into me over 16 years, was to laugh along, to smile and shrug like it didn't hurt, like it was just a joke, like I was in on it and not the punchline. So I tried. I forced my face into something resembling a smile. But then I looked around the tent. Most people were laughing, but not everyone. The elderly woman at the table next to mine, thin, Asian, with silver hair and an elegant twist, wasn't laughing. She was looking at me with something that might have been sympathy, might have been concern. Sophie, Nadia's roommate, had stopped clapping. She was staring at my parents with her mouth slightly open, like she couldn't believe what she'd just heard. And Nadia. Nadia was standing near the front, smiling, accepting congratulations from people around her. But her hands, I could see her hands from where I sat, were clenched white-knuckled around her program, crumpling the expensive cardstock. That's when it hit me. Not slowly, not gradually, but all at once, like a door slamming open in my mind. They just told a room full of strangers that I'm a disappointment, and everyone's acting like it's a joke. But jokes are supposed to be funny. This isn't funny. This is, oh God, this is who they are. This has always been who they are. The realization was so sharp, so sudden that I couldn't breathe. All those years of second-guessing myself, of thinking maybe I was too sensitive, maybe I was misremembering, maybe I was the problem. I wasn't the problem. They were. The elderly woman next to me leaned over. Her voice was soft, accented, Chinese maybe, or Korean. "That must have stung a bit, dear." I looked at her and I could feel tears starting to form. "What?" "What your parents said. Rather harsh, even as a joke." Someone else saw it. Someone else thought it was wrong. I wasn't crazy. I need to go to the bathroom, I managed, standing up too quickly. My chair scraped loudly against the ground. A few people looked over. My mother glanced at me, her smile faltering for just a second, before she turned back to accept congratulations from someone's grandmother. I walked as calmly as I could toward Memorial Hall, where I'd seen the restrooms earlier. My vision was blurry. My hands were shaking. I made it into a stall, locked the door, and finally let myself cry. Not the quiet crying I learned to do in my bedroom with a pillow over my face, the loud, ugly kind that made my whole body shake. I'd spent 16 years believing the problem was me, that if I could just be better, smarter, quieter, more like Nadia, they'd love me the way I needed to be loved. But they were never going to love me that way, because the problem wasn't me, it was them. I don't know how long I sat there, long enough for my eyes to get puffy and red, long enough for my breathing to slow down. Then I heard the bathroom door open. Elise? Nadia's voice, tentative. Ellie, are you in here? I didn't answer. I saw you leave. I know you're upset. Of course she did. Of course she'd followed me, because despite everything, Nadia cared. In her own complicated, limited way, she cared. I opened the stall door. She was standing by the sinks in her graduation gown, still holding her crumpled program. Her makeup was perfect, but her eyes were worried. I'm sorry about Mom and Dad's speech, she said quietly. That was, inappropriate. Inappropriate? The word came out sharper than I intended. Nadia, they basically said I was a mistake. They didn't mean it like that. They're proud of me, and they expressed it badly. I stared at her. Do you hear yourself? You're defending them? I'm not defending them. You are. You're making excuses for them. Again. Nadia's face shifted, something defensive creeping in. Elise, I know this is hard, but you have to understand. Mom and Dad have high standards. If you worked as hard as I did, I have a 4.0 GPA. I interrupted, my voice rising. I got a 1510 on my SAT. I'm on the debate team. I volunteer at the animal shelter every weekend. I'm taking 5 AP classes. What exactly am I not doing, Nadia? What's the magic thing I'm missing that would make them look at me the way they look at you? She flinched. I'm not saying you don't work hard. I'm saying maybe you're being too sensitive. It was a joke. It wasn't funny. To you. But maybe to them. Why are you acting like this? I demanded. Why are you so desperate to pretend they're not awful? Nadia's eyes filled with tears. Because if I admit that they're wrong about you, then I have to admit that everything I've built my life on is... She stopped, swallowed hard. I can't do that right now, Elise. I just can't. We stood there in that bathroom, two sisters trapped in different cages, staring at each other across the divide our parents had created. I love you, I said finally. But I can't keep doing this. Doing what? Pretending we're a normal family. Pretending their treatment of me is acceptable as long as nobody says it out loud. Nadia wiped at her eyes carefully, trying not to smudge her mascara. What are you going to do? I don't know yet, I said honestly, but something has to change. She nodded slowly, then turned and left without another word. I stayed in that bathroom for another 10 minutes, washing my face with cold water, trying to make the redness go away. When I finally emerged, the reception was winding down. People were saying their goodbyes, taking final photos. I found my grandmother, Patricia, and asked if I could ride back to the hotel with her and Grandpa Donald instead of with my parents. She looked at me, really looked at me, and said yes without asking questions. In the car, she reached over and squeezed my hand. Your parents were out of line today, she said quietly. It was the first time any adult in my family had ever acknowledged it. I squeezed back and didn't say anything because if I opened my mouth, I'd start crying again. We were all staying at the Charles Hotel in Cambridge. My parents had booked a 2-bedroom suite. Nadia got one room to herself. I was supposed to share the other room with my parents, sleeping on the pull-out couch. Budget considerations, my mother had explained when making the reservation. No point in paying for an extra room. That night, after the reception, after the dinner at Legal Seafoods where my parents held court and I picked at my lobster roll in silence, we all returned to the hotel. Nadia went to her room. My parents went to theirs. I lay on the pull-out couch, still in my navy dress, staring at the ceiling. The paper with my toast was still in my pocket, unread. I hadn't been called up to speak. When my father had finished his remarks and my mother had returned to her seat, I'd waited, thinking surely they'd invite me up next. Surely they'd remember. But the coordinator had called up Uncle Raymond instead. Then my grandmother. Then David Morrison. Then Professor Chen, one of Nadia's mentors. 8 people spoke. 9. If you counted my parents as 2 separate speeches. I wasn't one of them. At one point during the toasts, I'd caught my father's eye across the tent and gestured slightly. Should I go up? He'd shaken his head, so subtle that only I would see it, and mouthed, "Too many speakers." So I'd sat down and put the paper back in my pocket and smiled through 17 more minutes of other people praising my sister. Now, lying in the dark hotel room, I could hear my parents getting ready for bed in the next room. My mother's voice carried through the thin walls, talking to someone on the phone, probably Aunt Patricia, recapping the day's events. It was perfect, just perfect. Nadia looked so beautiful. I waited until I heard them turn off the light, waited another 30 minutes until I was sure they were asleep. Then I got up, still in my dress, and turned on the desk lamp. I needed to say something. I needed to tell them that what they'd done today wasn't okay, that it had never been okay. I'd spent my whole life staying quiet, swallowing my hurt, making myself smaller so I wouldn't be a problem. But something had broken in me today in that bathroom. Some fundamental acceptance of their treatment that I'd been carrying since I was 8 years old. I couldn't carry it anymore. I sat at the desk and waited for morning. At 7 a.m., I heard movement in their room, my father's alarm, the sound of the shower running. I stood up, smoothed down my wrinkled dress, and knocked on their door. My mother opened it, still in her bathrobe, hair in curlers. "Elise, what are you doing up so early?" "We need to talk," I said. "Can it wait? Your father and I need to pack. We have brunch with the Morrisons at 10. "No, it can't wait." Something in my voice made her pause. She stepped aside, let me in. My father was sitting on the edge of the bed, putting on his socks. He looked up when I entered. "Everything okay?" "No," I said. "Everything is not okay." They both stopped what they were doing. "What's this about?" my father asked, his tone already defensive. "It's about yesterday, about what you said in your speech." My mother sighed. "Oh, Elise, don't be so serious. It was just humor." "It wasn't funny," I said, voice shaking. "You humiliated me in front of hundreds of people." "Humiliated?" My mother's voice had that edge now, the one that meant I was being unreasonable. "Sweetie, everything isn't about you. This was Nadia's day." "I know it was Nadia's day, but you didn't have to make me the punchline to celebrate her." My father stood up, closing his laptop with a decisive click. "I think you're overreacting. Your mother and I said nothing untrue." The words hit like a physical blow. "Nothing untrue? You said you got it right the first time. What does that make me?" "Well, Elise," my mother said, her voice taking on that reasonable tone she used when she was about to say something cruel. "If we're being honest, you haven't exactly made things easy for us." "What does that mean?" My father crossed his arms. "It means your sister never needed us to constantly check her homework or remind her of responsibilities or worry about whether she'd amount to anything." The room tilted. "I'm 16 years old. I'm a straight A student. I have a 1,510 SAT score. I'm in 5 AP classes. What more do you want from me?" "We want you to stop being so needy," my mother said, and her voice was cold now, the pretense of maternal warmth completely gone. "All this validate me. Pay attention to me. It's exhausting, Elise. Nadia never required this much maintenance." I felt something crack inside my chest. Some last desperate hope that if I just explained it the right way, they'd understand. They'd apologize. They'd see me. But they were never going to see me. "Do you love me?" I asked. The question hung in the air. My mother blinked. My father's jaw tightened. Seconds passed. 5, 10, 15. Finally, my father spoke. "Of course we love you, but love doesn't mean we can't be disappointed." "Disappointed in what?" My mother sat down on the bed, like this conversation was tiring her. "In who you turned out to be. We had hopes that, well, that you'd be more like Nadia." The truth, delivered so casually, like it was obvious, like I should have known all along. "You don't love me." I said slowly, the realization settling over me like cold water. You love the daughter you wish I was. That's dramatic, my father said, dismissive. I need to leave. Leave? My mother looked confused. We're supposed to go to brunch with the Morrisons at 10, and then we're driving back to Chicago together. I'm going home early, alone. How? My father demanded. We drove here together. You can't just... I'll take the bus. Don't be ridiculous. You're 16, I corrected, my voice breaking. I'm 16. You don't even know how old I am. My mother's face went blank. My father opened his mouth, then closed it. I'm 16 years old, I repeated. My birthday was 3 weeks ago, May 7th. You sent me a text message that said, Happy birthday, sweetie, at 9 p.m., 4 hours after you got home from work. That's it. That was my entire birthday acknowledgement from my parents. We were busy with, my mother started, with Nadia's graduation preparations. I know. Everything is always about Nadia. I grabbed my purse from the couch, started shoving my things into it, my phone charger, my book, the crumpled toast I'd never gotten to read. I'm done trying to earn something you're never going to give me. Elise, you're being irrational, my father said. Sit down. We'll talk about this calmly. There's nothing to talk about. You've made yourselves very clear. I'm the disappointment. Nadia's the achievement. I get it. I've always gotten it. But I don't have to stay here and listen to you tell me that anymore. I walked to the door. My mother stood up. If you leave like this, you're only proving our point, that you're immature, that you can't handle difficult conversations like an adult. I turned back to look at them. My father, stone-faced and immovable. My mother, already calculating how she'd explain this to the Morrisons. You're right, I said. I can't handle conversations with you because they're not conversations. They're just different ways of telling me I'm not enough and I'm tired of listening. I opened the door. Elise Marie Sutton, if you walk out that door, my father started. I walked out. I didn't slam it. I closed it quietly behind me and walked down the hotel hallway to the elevator, pressed the button for the lobby. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely pull up the Greyhound website on my phone. There was a bus leaving from South Station at 11:30 a.m., Boston to Chicago, 21 hours. I booked a ticket, $47. In the lobby, I asked the concierge how to get to South Station. He gave me directions for the T. I thanked him and walked out into the bright May morning. My phone buzzed, a text from my mother. You're making a mistake. Then my father. This is childish behavior. Then Nadia. Ellie, what's going on? Mom says you left? I turned off my phone and got on the subway. 21 hours on a bus gave me a lot of time to think, to process, to understand that what had just happened wasn't a teenager throwing a tantrum. It was the first time in my life I'd chosen myself over their approval. It was the first time I'd said no. It was the first time I'd walked away. And I wasn't going back. The bus pulled into Chicago's Union Station at 8:47 a.m. on Sunday, May 29th. I'd been awake for most of the 21 hours, watching America scroll past the window. Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, small towns and rest stops, and the slow realization that I'd just burned down my relationship with my parents. I didn't feel regret. I felt numb. I took the red line home to our house in Lincoln Park, let myself in with my key, went upstairs to my room and slept for 14 hours straight. When I woke up Monday evening, my phone, still turned off, had 37 missed calls and 62 text messages. I deleted them all without reading them. Then I blocked my parents' numbers. The silent treatment started immediately. For the first week, they tried indirect routes. My grandmother, Patricia, called. Uncle Raymond called. Even Mrs. Morrison from my dad's work called, saying she'd heard there was a misunderstanding and maybe I'd like to talk it through. I was polite but firm. Thank you for calling, but this is between me and my parents. By the second week, the messages started coming through social media. My mother's Facebook friends, women I'd never met, sent me long private messages about respecting my parents, about how teenagers often go through difficult phases, about how I'd regret this someday. I turned my Facebook account to private and stopped checking it. Nadia called on June 15th. I'd left her number unblocked, some part of me still hoping she'd understand. Elise, please, she said when I answered. Just apologize. Make this easier on yourself. Apologize for what? For leaving like that. For embarrassing them in front of the Morrisons. For having boundaries. Silence on the other end. Nadia, they told a room full of people that I was a mistake, that they got it right the first time, with you. And you want me to apologize to them? I'm not saying they were right, but you're making this worse. They're my parents too, I said quietly. And look what it's costing you. What's that supposed to mean? It means you're so desperate for their approval that you're willing to throw me under the bus to keep it. You'd rather I apologize for being hurt than tell them they were wrong. Her voice hardened. I'm trying to help you. No, you're trying to make this easier for yourself. Because if I'm the problem, if I'm the dramatic, ungrateful daughter who overreacted, then you don't have to look at what they really are. She hung up. I sat on my bed, staring at my phone, and felt another piece of my heart break. Because losing my parents was painful, yes, but losing my sister, the only person who could have truly understood, that hurt in a different way. But I couldn't go back, not even for her. My senior year of high school became about one thing: escape. I threw myself into my studies with a focus that bordered on obsession. If I was going to get out, if I was going to build a life away from the Sutton family drama, I needed to be undeniable. Perfect grades, perfect test scores, perfect everything. I worked after school at the Ridgewood Public Library, shelving books and helping elementary school kids with their homework for $12 an hour. I saved every penny, opened my own bank account that my parents couldn't access. I applied to 12 colleges in the fall. Northwestern was my dream. Their journalism school was one of the best in the country, and it was right here in Chicago, close enough that I wouldn't have to move across the country, far enough that I could build my own life. I wrote my college essay about resilience, about learning to define success for myself instead of letting others define it for me. My English teacher, Mr. Patterson, read it and got tears in his eyes. "This is powerful, Elise," he said. "Whatever you've been through, you've transformed it into something meaningful." I didn't tell him what I'd been through, but I let him write me a recommendation letter, and I think he understood anyway. The acceptance letter from Northwestern came on April 10th, 2017. I was home alone when I opened it. My parents were at work, and I'd arranged my schedule specifically so I could check the mail before they got home. My hands shook as I tore open the envelope. "Dear Ms. Sutton, we are pleased to offer you admission to Northwestern University's Medill School of Journalism." I had to read it 3 times before it felt real. Then I saw the next part. "Based on your exceptional academic record and financial need, we are pleased to offer you a full ride scholarship covering tuition, room, and board." I sat down on the front porch steps and cried. Not sad tears, relief tears, freedom tears. I was getting out. I took a photo of the letter and sent it to the family group chat, the one I'd muted but never left because some part of me still needed them to know. I got into Northwestern, full scholarship. I watched the 3 dots appear and disappear, appear and disappear. Finally, 20 minutes later, my father, "That's good." An hour later, my mother, "Congrats." That evening, Nadia, "That's amazing, Elise. I'm really proud of you." That was it. No phone call, no celebration, no dinner out. For comparison, when Nadia got into Harvard, my parents had thrown a party, ordered a $200 cake from the fancy bakery downtown, mailed announcement cards to 50 relatives. For my Northwestern acceptance, arguably just as prestigious, I got 3 text messages totaling 11 words. I screenshotted them and saved them in a folder on my phone labeled "Remember," because I knew that someday, when I doubted my decision to cut them off, when I wondered if maybe I'd overreacted, I'd need proof that I hadn't. This was who they were, and I was done pretending it was enough. In early May, I needed their tax returns for financial aid paperwork. Even with a full scholarship, the university required FAFSA documentation. I called my father's cell. "Elise." His voice was flat. We hadn't spoken since that text message. "I need your tax returns for financial aid." "Why? You have a full scholarship." "I still need to file the forms. It's required." Silence. Then, "You don't need anything from us. You made that very clear. This isn't about needing you. This is about paperwork." I heard him sigh, heard him cover the phone to say something to my mother. Then my mother's voice. "Put her on speaker." "Elise," my mother said, her voice tight. "Since you have a scholarship, we're not contributing anything anyway. We don't have funds set aside for you." The words didn't quite compute. "What do you mean you don't have funds set aside?" "We mean we never opened a college savings account for you. We used our education fund for Nadia's first year at Harvard before she got her scholarships. There's nothing left." "You never planned to pay for my college?" My voice sounded distant, even to my own ears. "We thought you'd probably go to community college or..." My mother trailed off. Well, frankly, we didn't think you'd get into Northwestern. There it was. The truth, casual and cutting. They'd never believed in me. Not enough to save, not enough to plan, not enough to even imagine a future where I succeeded. I'll get the forms another way, I said, and hung up. I called the financial aid office and explained my situation, that my parents and I were estranged, that I couldn't get their cooperation. The advisor was kind. She helped me file for a dependency override, helped me navigate the paperwork as an independent student. It took 2 months and a letter from my school counselor documenting the family estrangement, but eventually it went through. I didn't need them. Not for this, not for anything. Moving day was August 18th, 2017. I'd been living in the house all summer, but we'd operated like strangers. My parents left for work before I woke up. I worked evening shifts at the library. We communicated through notes on the kitchen counter. Elise, took your laundry out of the washer. Mom, please buy your own groceries. We can't keep track of what's ours and what's yours. Dad, it was toxic and unsustainable, but I only had to survive until August. I'd found a studio apartment near campus through Northwestern's off-campus housing board. 400 square feet, $850 a month. I'd be working part-time to cover it, but it was mine. That morning, I packed everything I owned into 4 suitcases. Clothes, books, my laptop, the box from under my bed with all my achievements that nobody had celebrated. I was loading the last suitcase into my car, a 2004 Honda Civic I'd bought with my library savings, when I heard a car pull up. Nadia's silver Lexus. The graduation gift from our parents. She got out, dressed in jeans and a Harvard sweatshirt, her hair pulled back. She looked tired, thinner than I remembered. I heard you were leaving today, she said. How did you know? Mom mentioned it, in passing, like it was nothing. Of course she did. Can we talk? Nadia asked. I'm kind of busy. Please, Ellie, 5 minutes. I closed the trunk, leaned against it. Okay. She walked closer, stopped a few feet away. I'm sorry. For everything. For not standing up for you. For making excuses for them. Are you sorry enough to tell Mom and Dad they were wrong? She looked away. That's what I thought, I said. It's not that simple. It actually is, Nadia. Either you see what they did to me, or you don't. Either you're willing to say something, or you're not. I do see it, her voice cracked. But if I speak up, I'll lose them too. Then you're choosing them over me. And tears started falling down her face, smudging her mascara. I'm choosing myself. I'm choosing survival. I felt something in my chest soften, just slightly, because I understood that, the desperate need to hold on to something even when that something was slowly poisoning you. So am I said quietly. We stood there in the driveway, 2 sisters who loved each other but couldn't save each other. Are you going to be okay? She asked. Yeah, I think so. Will you ever talk to me again? I thought about it, really thought about it. I don't know, Nadia. Right now, talking to you means staying connected to them, and I can't do that anymore. I can't keep hoping you'll choose me because you won't. You've made that clear. Elise, I love you, I said, cutting her off. I really do, but I have to love myself more right now, and that means leaving, all of it, all of you. She nodded, wiping at her face. For what it's worth. You're the bravest person I know. And I got in my car and drove away without looking back. The next 3 years were the hardest and best of my life. I blocked Nadia's number that night, blocked the extended family, blocked anyone who might serve as a conduit back to the Suttons. I built a new life from scratch. Northwestern became my sanctuary. I dove into journalism, learned to write stories that mattered, found professors who actually saw my potential, made friends who didn't know anything about my family, who just knew me as Elise. Funny, driven, a little guarded, but trying. My roommate freshman year was Jenna Park, a pre-med student from Seattle who played terrible punk music at 2 a.m. and made the best instant ramen I'd ever tasted. She never asked why I didn't go home for holidays. She just invited me to hers. I got a job at Harper's Diner, working night shifts, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. on weekends, fitting around my class schedule. The pay was decent, $15 an hour plus tips, and Miguel, my coworker, became one of my closest friends. He was putting himself through community college, supporting his mom and little sister, and he understood what it meant to build your own path. Family's not just blood, he told me once during a slow Tuesday night shift. Family's who shows up. I started therapy in my sophomore year through Student Health Services. Dr. Rebecca Foster, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and an office that smelled like lavender. She's the one who told me about complex PTSD, about gaslighting, about emotional abuse and scapegoat dynamics, and all the psychological terms for things I'd experienced but never had names for. Your perception of reality was systematically undermined, she said during one session. That's not something you just get over. That's something you heal from slowly, with intention. The healing was slow. Some days I'd wake up and feel strong, independent, free. Other days I'd see a family at the diner, parents laughing with their kids, everyone relaxed and happy, and I'd have to lock myself in the bathroom to cry. But I was healing, bit by bit, day by day. For 3 years, I didn't hear from my parents. Not a single message, call, or email. The silence was its own kind of relief, which brings me back to November 14th, 2019, 11:47 p.m., Harper's Diner. Dr. Sarah Kim on the phone telling me my sister overdosed. I grabbed my jacket, told Miguel I had to leave, and drove to Northwestern Memorial with my hands shaking on the wheel. The ICU was on the 4th floor. Fluorescent lights, that particular hospital smell of antiseptic and fear. I gave Nadia's name at the nurse's station. Room 4B, the nurse said. She's awake. She's been asking for you. I walked down the hallway, past rooms with beeping machines and sleeping patients, and stopped outside 4B. Through the window, I could see her. Nadia, my sister, looking so small in that hospital bed, an IV in her arm, her hair limp around her face. I pushed open the door. She turned her head, saw me, and tears immediately started falling. You came. Of course I came. I pulled a chair up next to the bed, sat down. What happened, Nadia? She looked at the ceiling like she couldn't bear to meet my eyes. I've been struggling for years, since Harvard, maybe before, I don't even know anymore. Struggling with what? Everything. The pressure, the expectations, the voice in my head that sounds exactly like Mom telling me I'm only valuable if I'm perfect. She laughed bitterly. Ironic, right? You were the scapegoat, but I was the prisoner. I reached out, took her hand. It was cold. Why didn't you tell anyone? Because I'm the golden child, remember? I'm not allowed to struggle. Mom and Dad need me to be the success story. If I fall apart, then what's the point of any of it? What's the point of what they did to you if I don't even make it worth it? Nadia. My throat tightened. I got into Columbia Law, she said suddenly. Did you know that? That's amazing. I dropped out after 1 semester. Last year, 13 months ago. I've been lying to Mom and Dad this whole time. Telling them classes are great, grades are good, making up stories about professors and case studies and study groups that don't exist. I stared at her. They don't know? They can't know, because if the perfect daughter fails, if the one they sacrificed everything for, if the one they sacrificed you for can't even make it, then what does that say about their choices? So what have you been doing? Working as a paralegal at a small firm downtown, hating every second, drinking too much, taking pills to sleep, taking different pills to wake up, and tonight She closed her eyes. I took too many. I don't know if it was on purpose or if I just stopped caring about being careful. Your roommate found you? Sophie, from Harvard. She's the only person who knows I dropped out. She called 911. I squeezed her hand harder. I'm so glad she did. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Nadia said, I read your texts from 3 years ago when you told them you got into Northwestern. How? I was at the house. I heard Mom on the phone with Aunt Patricia. She said, well, at least Elise will be out of our hair soon, like you were a burden they couldn't wait to get rid of. She looked at me finally, her eyes red and swollen. And you want to know the worst part? What? I was relieved. Her voice broke. I was relieved that for once someone else was the disappointment, that for once the spotlight of their judgment was off me. I'm so sorry, Elise. I'm so fucking sorry. I felt tears on my own face now. I need you to understand something. What they did to me, they did to you too. It looked different, but it was the same poison. I know, I'm starting to see that. Are you going to tell them? About Columbia? About tonight? She was quiet for a long time. Then, I don't know. Are you going to talk to them again? I don't know either. Can we, and she hesitated, can we figure it out together? I thought about all the years of distance, all the hurt, all the ways we'd failed each other, but I also thought about what Miguel had said, families who shows up, and Nadia had asked for me, not our parents, me. Yeah, I said, we can do that. The next 4 months were a journey I never expected to take. Nadia spent 3 days in the hospital, then another week in a psychiatric facility for evaluation and stabilization. I visited every day, bringing her books and decent coffee and sitting with her while she worked through therapy sessions. When she was released, she asked if she could stay with me. My studio apartment was barely big enough for one person, let alone two. But I said yes anyway. We started joint therapy sessions with Dr. Foster. Twice a week, 90 minutes each time, unpacking our childhood piece by painful piece. The golden child and the scapegoat are both forms of abuse, Dr. Foster explained during one session. Nadia, you were taught that love was conditional on perfection. Elise, you were taught that you were inherently unworthy. Different tactics, same outcome. Two daughters who don't know how to trust themselves or each other. It was hard work. Some days we'd have breakthroughs. Other days we'd fight, really fight, screaming matches about who had it worse, who deserved more sympathy, who was more damaged. But we kept showing up, to therapy, to each other. In January 2020, Nadia made a decision. I'm going to tell them, she said one night as we sat on my tiny couch eating takeout Thai food, about Colombia, about the overdose, about everything. How do you think they'll react? Badly, but I'm done performing for them. I'm done being their trophy daughter while I fall apart inside. Do you want me there? She shook her head. No, this is mine to do. On January 25th, she called them. She'd written out what she wanted to say on index cards, rehearsed it in therapy. I wasn't on the call, but she told me about it afterward, sitting on the bathroom floor with her knees pulled to her chest. I told them I dropped out of Colombia, that I'd been lying for over a year, that I overdosed in November. Her voice was flat, emotionless. You want to know the first thing Mom said? I waited. She said, how could you do this to us? Do you know how humiliating this is? My stomach dropped. Not, are you okay? Not, we're so sorry you were struggling. Just, how dare I embarrass them? Nadia laughed, but there was no humor in it. Dad asked what they were supposed to tell people, how they were supposed to explain that their perfect daughter was actually a failure. Nadia, then Mom asked if you put me up to this, if you'd poison me against them. I closed my eyes. I told them you saved my life, that you were the only one who showed up, that they didn't even know I was drowning because they'd never bothered to look below the surface. What did they say? Dad said they gave me everything, that I was ungrateful, that I was throwing away opportunities people would kill for. She looked at me, her eyes empty. Mom said if I was going to be ungrateful like you, maybe I should just go live with you. So I told them maybe I would. And Dad said, then I guess we don't have daughters anymore. We sat there in the bathroom of my studio apartment, two sisters who'd finally chosen each other over our parents' approval, and we cried together for the first time in our lives. The healing didn't happen overnight. It happened in tiny moments spread across months. Like the morning in early February when Nadia got offered a job at a legal aid clinic, low-paying, unglamorous work helping people who couldn't afford lawyers. She came home and stood in the doorway of my apartment holding the offer letter. I got a job offer, she said. That's great. It's not prestigious. It's not what Mom and Dad would want, but she smiled and it was real. It feels right. Then that's all that matters. Mom would hate it. Good thing Mom doesn't get a vote anymore. She laughed, and I realized I hadn't heard her really laugh in years, or like the night in mid-March when I had a panic attack, a bad one, triggered by seeing a family at the diner who reminded me of ours. I came home shaking, and Nadia was there. She didn't try to fix it or tell me to calm down. She just sat with me on the floor and breathed with me until it passed. When did you get so wise? She asked afterward, when I stopped asking permission to exist. Small victories. Small moments of healing. We didn't talk to our parents. They sent occasional emails, guilt trips disguised as concern, attempts to manipulate us back into the fold. We deleted them unread. Uncle Raymond reached out once, saying he wanted to mediate the family conflict. We politely declined. We were building something new, something healthier, and we couldn't do that while still connected to the thing that had poisoned us. So that's my story. That's how I went from being the daughter who was never enough to the woman who decided she'd always been enough. They just couldn't see it. People ask me sometimes if I've forgiven my parents. I tell them, forgiveness isn't the goal, understanding is. I understand now that Calvin and Renee Sutton were never going to love me the way I needed, not because I wasn't enough, but because they weren't capable. They built a hierarchy in our home, golden child on top, scapegoat on the bottom. What they didn't realize is that both positions are prisons. Nadia spent 22 years trying to stay on the pedestal, terrified of falling, slowly suffocating under the weight of expectations. I spent 16 years trying to climb up, exhausting myself, breaking myself apart, trying to become someone they might love. We were both prisoners, just in different cells. The cruelest thing wasn't the comparisons. It wasn't the public humiliation at Nadia's graduation, or the forgotten birthdays, or even the years of making me doubt my own reality. The cruelest thing was making us believe that love had to be earned through performance, that we were only valuable when we were useful, that our worth was determined by how well we met their standards instead of being inherent in who we were. Getting free didn't mean cutting them off, though that's what happened. Getting free meant learning to trust myself again, to believe my memories were real, to know that my feelings mattered even if no one validated them, to understand that I was allowed to set boundaries, to say no, to choose myself. Nadia's learning that too. Slower, harder. It's different when you've spent your whole life as the favorite, when you have to dismantle the very pedestal you were taught to cherish. But she's learning, and we're learning together. Last week, we went to IKEA and bought a small table for my apartment. Our apartment now, I guess. We put it together, argued about the instructions, laughed when we realized we'd put one leg on backward. Then we sat at that table, the one we built ourselves, that nobody gave us. And we had dinner, just the two of us. No performance, no judgment, no competition for scraps of approval. Just two sisters who'd survived the same war and were learning what it meant to live in peacetime. We're not the daughters they wanted. We're not the daughters they tried to mold us into. But we're becoming the women we needed when we were little girls sitting in that house, wondering why we weren't enough. And you know what? That's more than enough. That's everything. If you're the scapegoat in your family, I want you to know you're not crazy. Your memories are real. Your feelings are valid, and you don't owe anyone your suffering just to keep the peace. If you're the golden child, I want you to know the pedestal is a cage. You're allowed to step down. You're allowed to be human, to fail, to need help. Your worth isn't in your achievements. Either way, healing starts when you stop auditioning for their approval. You were always enough. They just couldn't see it. And that's on them. Not you. Never you. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for staying with me all the way to the end. If this resonated with you, if you've lived some version of this story yourself, please know you're not alone. And if you found value in this, if it helped you understand your own story a little better, please subscribe to this channel. There are so many more stories to tell, so many more truths that need to be spoken. You're not alone. You never were.